I knew I was going to be a newspaper man. I knew that from before I went into college. Times-Union was like my favorite paper, and when I was growing up, there was some major event, they'd send me out on it, and I was having a good time. An old girlfriend of mine went down to Puerto Rico. She wrote me and said, look, if you are looking for a job, they're starting a paper down here. That was a San Juan Star.
So what brought you, or both of you, down to Puerto Rico?
I was there before he was.
I went to get vengeance on him.
My parents, they just went back to Puerto Rico after having been in New York for like 30 years.
She was absolutely stunningly gorgeous.
He was very handsome. And then about, half an hour later, he asked me for a date.
I wrote her a letter after she left, and I proposed to her on the third date.
So there's no before we were married. We have always been married.
I never expected to come back, but my father got sick, and I decided I did want to move back to Albany for a while. And I came back, and I never left. I worked 7 years writing whatever took me by the throat. I decided I would write a book about the Albany political machine. Dan O'Connell, of course, was the principal figure. And then when I got to the start to write it, and I started to write, well, I'll start with Legs Diamond, And suddenly, Legs Diamond took over the whole book. I abandoned the political novel, and I just wrote Legs.
I think Billy Phelan's Greatest Game is one of his most accessible novels.
I created Francis Phelan, and in Billy Phelan's book, and he was such a striking character in that book for me and a lot of other people that I knew. I said, I got a book here on Francis.
In his farmhouse in Averill Park, his wife and children with him. His book Ironweed had won him the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. He got the news at about 10 o'clock in the morning, and the phone hadn't stopped ringing.
I'm nonplussed. I'm, just staggered. This it just doesn't seem to stop, and it's beyond what any writer is supposed to expect out of this life. Writers are not supposed to get this much attention.
Spring of 1983 was when Ironweed came out and the MacArthur happened, and then the summer he immediately went to New York City to work on the Cotton Club.
The action was in full scale. In came writer Bill Kennedy, and make no doubt about it, this was his day. Kennedy walked on stage and was met with spontaneous ovation. Albany loves its favored son. Seldom do writers of any kind get such applause.
This is a warehouse in Colony. It's the central location where much of the indoor scenes for the movie Ironweed will be shot, starring Jack Nicholson and Meryl Streep.
It's a heartbreaking story of loss and regret.
Professor, I'm burned out on bartending. When I first saw the movie Ironweed, I thought, this is for me. But now, well, I'm not so sure.
Barcelona, when I was with Gabo, at the end of the interview, we went out to dinner at 11 o'clock at night to the best secret restaurant in Barcelona, and we'd been talking about how do you find out about writing, and what is writing all about, and this and that. And so I asked him a question, a kind of a culminating question at the end of the dinner, and I said, how would you define fiction? And so he said, let me see your notebook, and he pulled out a piece of paper and he drew these squares. So this is what's in fiction: sadness, love, humor, money, politics, hope, death, nostalgia, and life. And then he sounded Garcia up there at the top.
Did you add anything to that? What would you add to it?
Well, he left out crime. I'd have to, there's a lot of criminals in Albany.